Wow, that sounds tough. Alright, I got it. I'll be there soon. It might be the pain causing me to miss here, but it feels like Jack just said he'd go to his sister-in-law's place right away. My sis, she can't make it to her favorite band's concert because the train stopped due to a person under the train incident. Gonna give her a lift. With that, Jack opened the door to the rear seat where I was sitting. You can make it to the hospital on your own. He quickly got me and my luggage out of the car as I curled up in pain. You should be able to get an ambulance with your condition. Listen, call 911 right away and get help. If anything happens to our future kid, I won't forgive you. Leaving those words behind, he drove off. Please, help me. The number you have dialed is currently not in use. Please check the number and dial again. The number you have dialed is currently. I repeated this a few times pretending to be an automated message, then hung up the phone and blocked Jack's number. My name is Emily, I'm 27 years old. I work as an elementary school teacher, but I'm currently on maternity leave. I'm 10 months pregnant, and the due date for the birth is approaching soon. Despite feeling anxious about my first childbirth, I'm looking forward to the day I can meet my child, counting the days. My husband Jack is 30 years old, 3 years my senior. We met in a college club, became friends, and started dating after he graduated. Then, 2 years ago we got married, and now we are blessed with our first child on the way. When we reported the pregnancy to both sets of parents, they were thrilled and told me to take care of myself, but there was one person who responded disinterestedly. Instead of that, I asked for time off next week for a concert and the manager said no, so I quit in a huff. Let them struggle with short staff, serves them right. That's Jack's sister. When I reported the pregnancy, she treated my pregnancy lightly, grumbling about her part-time job. My mother-in-law quickly scolded her, but she said, it doesn't concern me. Besides, it's not even sure if the baby will be born safely, in a shocking manner. I was furious, but I knew she was this kind of person all along, so I didn't bother getting upset now. Jack's sister is 7 years his senior, a significantly older eldest daughter. Spoiled rotten by her grandparents when she was little, she still hasn't outgrown her princess phase. It was the same when we got married. Normally, guests avoid white at weddings out of consideration for the bride, but Jack's sister insisted on wearing white and showed up in a white dress. It was a white mini dress with feathers, looking like something an idol would wear. It seemed she mistook our wedding for her solo performance. There, I told you white suits me better. Sorry if it's confusing who the star of the show is. My relatives and friends were shocked, and she mistook their stares for admiration, smugly making that comment. Of course, it was outrageous for Jack's sister to wear such a dress, and the fact that her parents and Jack didn't stop her was just as crazy. My parents and I felt utterly embarrassed. Before getting married, I thought Jack was kind and a genuinely nice person, but it was at this time that I first noticed something was off. However, I still had faith in Jack and loved him, so I turned a blind eye. It's just the sister-in-law who's weird, the in-laws are just speechless because of her, and Jack is the same. I tried to convince myself. After we started our new life, it wasn't long before I had to supervise a field trip for my second graders. The destination was a planetarium within the city. Taking small children out for a trip is nerve-wracking. I had to make sure no one got lost or involved in an accident and get them back to school safely. They say, the trip isn't over until you're home, and that's exactly right. I had to stay alert the entire time. Just as I arrived at the planetarium, my phone on vibrate in my bag started to shake. When I checked, there was a call from a number I didn't recognize. I generally don't pick up calls from numbers I don't know. So I ignored it, but the calls kept coming persistently, and thinking it would disrupt the planetarium show, I turned off the phone. After the show, it was time for the kids to have a look at the indoor exhibits. Since the museum staff would take over from here, it was a bit of a breather for us teachers. I sat down on a sofa in the lounge area with another teacher and took a break with a cup of coffee from the vending machine. When I turned my phone back on, I couldn't believe the number of missed calls. The unknown number had changed to Jack's halfway through. Could it be that something happened to one of the in-laws? I excused myself to my colleague and rushed to a quieter spot to make the call. You're late. What have you been doing? I was greeted with a shout. I had made it clear that today was a field trip day. I explained that I had turned off the phone so as not to disturb the show. Why didn't you just leave it on vibrate? Why turn it off? Well, whatever. You're at the forest park, right? The science museum with the planetarium is located in a municipal forest park. It's a bit away from the city, so you can't get there without a bus or a car. There's a surprise live concert by Sis's second favorite idol at the outdoor theater, and they're selling autographed photos with today's date, limited in quantity. Go get her one. For a moment, I thought it was a joke. I was here on duty today, I couldn't leave my post for such an errand. The forest park is vast, and it would take at least 20 minutes to walk back and forth between the science museum and the outdoor theater. And today it was raining. Am I supposed to go buy a photo in the rain for my sister-in-law? I firmly refused and reiterated to Jack that I was working. I'm disappointed, you're such a cold-hearted person. That's not like you, right? Emily, you're supposed to be kind-hearted, please, go get it for me. Jack tried to guilt-trip and flatter me into going, but I was at work and couldn't accept, no matter what was said. Fine, forget it. I'm let down. Jack yelled those words and hung up the phone. I felt a chill in my heart. Never did I imagine Jack would ask for something so unreasonable. It left me feeling unpleasant and sad. But I managed to suppress my feelings and finish the field trip. When I got home, Jack wasn't there, but there was a message on my phone saying he was waiting at his parents' house. With a heavy heart, I walked the 15 minutes to my in-laws' place. There were the in-laws, Jack, and my sister-in-law. Apologize to your sister, was the first thing said. My sister-in-law had learned about the surprise concert while she was working, rushed out from her job to the outdoor theater, but by the time she got there, the limited edition autographed photos were sold out. Poor thing, she's been crying her eyes out, said Jack while rubbing his sister's back, making a face as if it was such a pitiful situation. When I looked to the in-laws to see what they were doing, both had sorry looks on their faces, but that was it. There didn't seem to be any thoughts of how to deal with their unreasonable daughter and son. After sniffing for a while, my sister-in-law wiped her face with a crumpled idol merch towel, smiled brightly, and said, "It's okay now. But instead, buy this for me." She thrust her phone at me. It was the screen of a flea market app. "Hey, if you buy that for her, she'll forgive you for today." Lucky you. Jack pointed with a smile, and there in the spot he indicated was a photo that seemed to be a limited edition print from today's event. $300. I couldn't believe that the print, which was originally sold for $5, now had such a price tag on it. It's a steal, right? Just for that, you get forgiveness from Sis. Just? $300 is just? For a mere piece of paper? My sister-in-law was looking at me with hopeful eyes full of expectation. Her right hand was offering a smartphone, and with her left hand she was making a cute pose, pressing it to her lips as if to maximize her charm. Jack was gazing at his sister-in-law's profile with an affectionate look. My in-laws, just like before, gave me an apologetic look, but it seemed they weren't planning on doing anything more than that. I had no intention of playing along with this charade. But I realized that if I didn't make my stance clear right then, I'd be manipulated forever. So I decided to give in to my sister-in-law's demands this time. "All right, I'll buy it for you." My sister-in-law's face lit up like a sunrise, and she clapped her hands together like a child. "But don't think this is an apology. This is the first and last time. I won't lift a finger for you after this. This is a declaration of my resolve." In front of a surprised Jack and sister-in-law, and in-laws who looked troubled as they glanced at each other, I won the $300 print. Then I left my in-laws' house without a word and went home alone. For a while after that day, Jack didn't come back from his parents' house, but one day he returned as if nothing had happened, as though the heat had died down. I accepted it silently. I had no intention of asking what my sister-in-law did with that print, nor did I want any further involvement. If anything more was said or done, I was prepared to end the marriage right there. Perhaps Jack sensed my resolve because he never brought up his sister again. And so, we returned to being an ordinary couple and settled into a peaceful life. Amidst this, I noticed something was off. When I bought a pregnancy test from the pharmacy and checked, it was positive. I was pregnant. After a few months, I visited my in-laws' house to share the news, and while they were overjoyed, my sister-in-law was as dismissive as ever, treating it as a so-what situation. From then on, I didn't see my sister-in-law, and the baby in my belly grew healthily. It's a boy. I wonder what a cute child he will be. Finally, the time came for the birth. My water broke, and I started to prepare for the hospital. Labor pains began soon after. You okay? I'll get you to the hospital right away, Jack said kindly as he helped me into the car. I had my fears about giving birth, but it was going to be okay. Jack was with me. I calmed my heart while gently rubbing my belly. It's okay, it's okay. We'll meet soon, I murmured. Suddenly, a familiar ringtone echoed in the car. It was Jack's phone. That ringtone meant it was a call from his sister. Hello? Hello? Jack pulled the car over and answered the phone. Why answer it now? Weren't you in a hurry to get me to the hospital? While enduring another wave of pain, that's what I thought. What? Really? That's terrible. Yeah, I got it, I'll be right there. Was it a trick of the pain, or did I just hear Jack tell his sister he'd be right there? Sis can't get to her favorite band's concert because the train stopped due to an accident. Gotta give her a lift. With those words, Jack opened the car door where I was sitting in the back seat. You can get to the hospital on your own, right? He hurriedly got me and my belongings out of the car while I was curled up in pain. If you're in this condition, you should be able to get an ambulance to come for you. Listen, call 911 right away and ask for help. I won't forgive you if anything happens to our heir. With those words, he left in the car. I was left on the street with my luggage. Is this really happening? I couldn't believe that he would do this to his wife, who was about to give birth soon. I didn't even feel angry anymore. I just started laughing out loud. It was a good thing no pedestrians were around, as I laughed louder than I thought I would. Although my mind was surprisingly calm, my body wouldn't stop laughing. Hello, I need an ambulance. Yes. The location is. I looked at a nearby building and gave them a general idea of where I was. I rode alone in the ambulance that came for me to the hospital for childbirth. The hospital took me in right away and started the preparations for delivery immediately. I called my parents and explained to them what had happened today in a matter-of-fact tone. My parents were speechless and said they would come right away. When I was left behind, I felt I could handle anything alone, but knowing someone was coming for me was reassuring. Waves of pain came and went. The nurses and midwives came to check on me, saying everything was going well. About an hour after arriving at the hospital, my smartphone rang. The contractions had just eased up, so I picked it up and saw the name of the last person I wanted to see. It was Jack. I let it sit in my hand for a while, but after he kept leaving voicemails and calling back repeatedly, I decided to answer. Not because I was concerned about Jack, but because it was just too annoying. As I pressed the call button, Jack's voice came through. Hello, Emily. Oh, thank goodness, you picked up. Jack's voice sounded deeply relieved. Maybe he was worried about his wife and unborn child he had left behind. But that thought was quickly proven wrong. Please, I need your help. I thought it was nonsensical. What did he expect his wife, about to give birth at any moment, to help with? Actually, there was a bit of an accident at the rest stop. The number you have dialed is not in service. Please check the number and dial again. The number you have. I repeated this a couple of times, pretending to be an automated message, then hung up and blocked Jack's number. I safely gave birth to a boy. It was surprisingly easy. Perhaps the shock of the whole ordeal had done something to my pain receptors. It went so fast that even the hospital staff were amazed, saying it's unusual for a first-time mom. Anyway, easier is always better. I felt bliss looking at my sleeping son. He was born so quickly that my parents, who had rushed from far away, couldn't make it in time for the birth. They looked apologetic, but they were more relieved that my son and I were safe, and they smiled beautifully. I was glad to see their smiling faces. I didn't inform the in-laws. If Jack wants to tell them, he can do it himself. Even if they did come, I had no intention of letting them see my son. This child is mine alone, with no ties to my husband's family. I had informed the hospital that I didn't want to see anyone from the visit. Except for my parents. Perhaps because I asked them to turn away anyone else without notifying me, I never had to encounter anyone from my husband's family during my stay. I finished a 5-day hospital stay and went straight home with my parents. When I got home, I immediately asked a lawyer to start divorce proceedings. Abandoning a pregnant woman in labor by the side of the road is grounds enough for divorce, surely. The lawyer was appalled when he heard and said it could constitute abandonment of a person in need of protection or malicious abandonment resulting in injury. He said that leaving a pregnant woman in labor, who couldn't fend for herself, on the side of the road was an act of a brute, and I agree. By the way, I had a call from Jack that day asking for help, but I had shut down all contact related to my family, so I had no idea what had happened. I asked the lawyer, as an afterthought, to find out what had gone down and let me know. And the story I heard from the lawyer was just terrible. After abandoning me, Jack went to pick up his sister, and apparently stopped at a rest area on the freeway. It would have been about a 90-minute trip to the concert venue, combining train and bus rides. His sister, planning to buy merchandise and take photos, had left the house with plenty of time to spare and wanted to have a meal on the way. All at Jack's expense, of course. They ate the rest area's signature dish, and just when they were about to get back into the car to head to the venue, his sister flung the car door open and hit the car next to them. A real door ding. She must have hit it pretty hard because the other car's door was badly damaged. Normally, you'd apologize to the car owner and contact the police or your insurance company, but, shockingly, the siblings decided to flee the scene. No one's looking right now, so it's okay. We can't be late to the concert. Jack was about to drive off when the car owner came back, and he was not alone. 4 intimidating-looking guys were with him. Surrounded and unable to leave, Jack was dragged out of the car and reprimanded for trying to run away. Meanwhile, his sister was pleading with the tough guys to let her go because she'd be late for the concert. She may get away with unreasonable demands in the family, but there's no way a victim would accommodate such a request, especially after what she did. She desperately tried to charm them, but let's face it, only her own family would call her cute. Needless to say, she got no sympathy from the tough guys. Realizing that her pleas were falling on deaf ears and that she might miss the merch sales before the concert, she started to cry out loudly. Menacing figures berating him for trying to escape, a weeping sister-in-law dressed in flamboyant outfits for a live show. Service area employees and customers gathered around, creating quite a commotion. Perplexed, Jack ended up calling me for help. With what intention, I wonder? What kind of nerve does he have? Could it be that he forgot that I was on my way to the hospital because my water had broken and I was about to give birth? Or did he think that I would pause my labor to rush to my husband's crisis? Perhaps, the help he was seeking was for someone to send his sister off to the live show. Whatever his reasoning, it was an impossible situation for me. Even if I wasn't about to give birth, I wouldn't want to rush over to help with such a mess. They should clean up their own mess. It turned out that Jack had been embezzling the money I gave him from our budget for car insurance. And where did that money go? His sister's allowance. She's 37 and still working odd jobs because she's chasing after idols. She claims she could find a stable job whenever she wanted, but she wouldn't be able to take time off for concerts. And with her habit of quitting jobs on a whim, she's become unemployable. She squanders the little she makes and the pocket money from her parents, and of course, she sponges off Jack too. So, Jack gave the insurance money to his sister as pocket money and played dumb about it. The car they hit was a luxury foreign car, and the repair costs would all come out of pocket. I flatly refused Jack's absurd suggestion that we should work together to pay it off. The divorce was messy. Jack couldn't understand why he had to be divorced and was furious with the lawyer. I just took my sister, who was running late, to a concert. No one could have predicted that accident. Yeah, Jack did nothing wrong. It's those men's fault for making a big deal out of a scratch. They bitterly ranted about the victims. Jack seemed to think the reason I wanted a divorce was because of that accident. Wanting a divorce over a minor car accident, Emily is just being spoiled. Tell her to stop messing around and come back home already, was what was said. That's right, over something like that. Next, I was the subject of a litany of badmouthing. It seemed that Jack and my sister-in-law were badmouthing me together, and my in-laws just sat there silently with troubled looks on their faces. I could almost picture it happening right before my eyes. When the lawyer said that wasn't it, the main reason was because she was abandoned halfway through her pregnancy, Jack seemed genuinely surprised. What? For that? But Emily went to the hospital by ambulance, and she safely gave birth to the child, right? There were no problems at all. Really making a mountain out of a molehill. Yeah, my sister was about to miss a concert because the trains were down, right? It was only natural to give her a ride. Jack said with a smug look on his face, and my sister-in-law nodded vigorously in agreement. Of course, it seemed the in-laws just sat there silently with troubled faces. The lawyer was at a loss for words, wondering how to explain the situation. That's when it was explained politely that the accident had nothing to do with the divorce and that they should handle that separately. Then, it was conveyed how terrible Jack's actions had been. No matter how many times it was explained, Jack insisted that all's well that ends well, that I managed to get to the hospital on my own, and since nothing happened, there was no problem. But when the lawyer patiently explained that it could have ended badly for both me and the baby, and that Jack could have been held legally responsible, it seemed to finally dawn on him the gravity of the situation. He turned pale, started to tremble, and asked if he and my sister-in-law could be arrested. Even then, it seems he was more concerned about himself and my sister-in-law than about me and the baby, as the lawyer reported with a sense of pity. It was a struggle, but the divorce was finally settled, and I was free from Jack's family. I felt relieved, but Jack was still hung up and kept calling me or sending messages on social media asking to get back together. It was so annoying that I had to block him again, and then he started sending letters to my parents' house. According to his letter, he didn't expect me to be so upset over that. The childbirth went well, after all, and it was cruel to divorce over just one mistake. You were supposed to be a more forgiving woman. Give me another chance. Don't you want a daughter next time? It's sad for our son to be an only child. And by the way, the son is the heir to our family. Give him back to me. If you do, I'll accept you once again as a daughter-in-law of the family. It's not a bad deal, is it? He started off humble but became increasingly arrogant, which apparently reflected my sister-in-law's opinion. I could tell because at the end of the letter, it said, "So, my sister says she's willing to forgive you now, think about it." From the moment I started reading the letter, I could guess its contents, but as I read on, I almost burst out laughing, and by the end, I was in stitches. I got the lawyer to warn them about a restraining order and that if they contacted me again, I'd ask for more alimony, and then the contact stopped. It's bittersweet to think they backed off the moment money was mentioned. They cared more about money than their precious heir. The in-laws haven't said a word. From start to finish, they were like extras in a drama, completely inconspicuous. Since they haven't expressed any desire to see their grandson, I don't feel the need to reach out either. I can't trust any of the in-laws, so I demanded a lump sum for alimony and child support. I couldn't bear the thought of dealing with them for years to come, and I predicted they'd likely stop payments at some point. Combining the payments for me, the car repairs, and everything else amounted to quite a sum, so they took a mortgage out on their home in Jack's name and paid me in one lump sum as requested. I hope they don't end up losing their house over this, but that's no longer my concern. After all, the combined alimony and child support won't nearly cover the costs of raising a child to adulthood. Once my health is back to normal and my son has settled down, I'll return to my job as a teacher. Fortunately, my parents said they'd help out, and I'll manage to get by. I want my son to be someone who can think for himself and live his life properly on his own. I don't want him to turn out like his father, who was nothing more than a relative by blood, or like his aunt. Nor like his parents, whose presence in our lives was always uncertain. Despite the unfortunate outcome of my marriage, I'm grateful for having been given my son. From now on, it will be just the two of us, living happily together. And if there's a new person in the future who comes along and loves my son, I won't hesitate to welcome that happiness into our lives.